Here at Cork and Fizz, I'm all about helping you discover new wines. Yes, I know it's easy to just continue to buy your favorite bottle, but I have to tell you, you're missing out. Did you know there are over 10,000 different grape varieties and over 65,000 wine producers worldwide? Trust me, there are so many more delicious wines out there for you to try, and your next favorite bottle is just waiting for you to find it. In an effort to encourage you to try something new, I'm bringing back my free summer wine challenge. That's right, it's free. Head to the link in my show notes, corkandfizz.com/summer wine challenge to sign up. This challenge will last 6 weeks, and during that time, all I ask is that you try 6 new wines and fill out a simple tasting form on my website for each one. I'll also be sending you exclusive weekly emails with recommendations for regions and wines to explore. Plus, you'll have access to not one, but 2 free live virtual tastings where you get to learn about and taste wine with me and fellow challenge goers. If you successfully taste and record 6 new wines in the 6 weeks, you'll receive a class pass, which gives you access to a virtual tasting party of your choosing with my tasting club, the Cork Crew. Plus, everyone who completes the challenge will be entered to win a free 1-year membership to the Cork Crew, with one lucky winner being chosen at the end of July. We start June 19th, but you can sign up anytime between now and before the challenge ends on July 30th. Head to the link in my show notes to join me. Oh, and did I mention it's free? Interested in learning about wine, but not sure where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I'm your host, Haley Bowman, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a wine enthusiast turned wine educator and founder of the Seattle-based wine tasting business, Cork and Fizz. It is my goal to build your confidence in wine by making it approachable and lots of fun. You can expect to learn everything from how to describe your favorite wine to what to pair with dinner tonight, and so much more. Whether you're a casual wine sipper or a total cork dork like myself, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a glass and let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. If you're new here, hi, so glad you're here. Hope you enjoy the episode. And for our regular listeners, thanks for being here and listening in. Today's episode is very much inspired by the weather. It is definitely starting to feel like summer here in the Pacific Northwest. It's kind of that moment where the clouds start to break and the sun stays out longer and you got that warmer temperature. And I feel like a lot of people lean towards rosé and white wine in the summer. But there is another style that was quite trendy, I think, last year, but I don't think it should die. I don't think it's one of those that's like, it's a trend that just dies out. I think we should keep this around. These are chillable red wines. And so I'm going to talk to you today about what makes a red wine chillable. And then I'm going to be sharing 6 of my favorite chillable red wines for you to go on the lookout for and for you to try this summer. So what is a chillable red wine? Now, talking about just regular red wine, we don't normally serve it directly out of the fridge. Now, we also, or at least I am a big advocate of teaching folks to not serve it directly just at room temperature either. What I would recommend that you serve that at is at cellar temperature is what it's called. So it's slightly chiller. It's about 55 to 62 degrees Fahrenheit. And so what I'd recommend you do for most red wines is you'd stick them in the fridge for 15 to 30 minutes before drinking them, just so it drops that temperature a little bit. Now, a chillable red wine is one of those wines that taste better at an even lower temperature, so something closer to 48 to 54 degrees. So rather than 30 minutes in the fridge, you can leave them in there for an hour or two, or you could store them in the fridge and then take them out about an hour before you're planning to drink them. Now, the qualities that you can expect from a chillable red include high acidity. So remember, that's that tartness or like how much it makes you salivate. They also have lighter bodies. So the body of the wine is the weight of the wine. How heavy is it? And so a lighter bodied, it is it is what it sounds like. It is light. It doesn't have a lot of weight to it. It's not super viscous. It's not going to coat your mouth. It also has low tannins, and tannins are those things that make your mouth feel dry. And so normally a chillable red will have very low amounts of that, so you won't get a lot of that like cotton ball in your mouth kind of feeling. And the last quality of a chillable red is that it tastes great now, meaning you don't have to age it. They're meant to be drank young. Now, the good news is that a lot of these wines are also a great value. So they're perfect for enjoying out on the patio with friends on a warm, sunny day. That's like my favorite time for a chillable red wine, which is why we are talking about them now. Generally, you can look to spend no more than $30 per bottle for a great chillable red, though I've definitely had some that are higher up there. Just depends on where you get them from. Sometimes newer world, smaller wineries are going to have them a little higher price, but they're usually worth it. But either way, they're not meant for aging, they're meant for enjoying. Just a quick reminder, if you are not on my mailing list yet, what are you waiting for? I would love for you to join. When you do, you'll get a free shopping guide that has 15 of my favorite wines under $15. Head to corkandfizz.com, scroll down to the bottom, and there'll be a little section where you can join the mailing list. I send out a weekly newsletter filled with wine tips, recommendations, special offers, and so much more. Now, let's get back to the show. So here are 6 of my favorite chillable red wines perfect for summer. Now, we're going to start with the OG chillable red, and to me, that is Gamay. I think it's the most popular in this category and probably the easiest to find. Now, Gamay originally comes from the Beaujolais region in France, just south of Burgundy. You might remember us talking about this in my French wine podcast. I'm trying to remember if it was in part 1 or part 2, but go check out the show notes for those and find out which one talks about Beaujolais. It is just south of Burgundy and they make Gamay. That's what they do. But now Gamay is grown all across the world from Australia to California. Now, if it's Beaujolais, it's likely to be labeled as the region and not the grape. So you're going to have to look for Beaujolais, which is spelled nothing like how it sounds. It's Beaujolais. Whenever I write Beaujolais, I have to think in my head, beautiful. You know how you spell beautiful? Like that's what I say in my head to spell that. I also say it when I spell Beaujolais. If it's from anywhere else besides Beaujolais, or I suppose you can also find it in the Anjou region in the Loire Valley, that will also be labeled as the region. So Anjou. And it could be blended with another chillable red wine that we're going to talk about, which is Cabernet Franc. But those are the ones where you're going to find the region on the label. If it comes from anywhere else, you should find Gamay written on the label. Some of my favorite Gamay from outside of France has come from Oregon. In a great Gamay, you can expect a mix of fruity, floral, and earthy aromas such as pomegranate, raspberry, violet, potting soil, and cherry blossoms. In terms of structure, Gamay is exactly what you'd expect from a chillable red. It is light-bodied with high acidity, low alcohol, and hardly any tannins. And if you're pairing this wine with food, you don't have to try that hard. Gamay pairs well with just about everything from grilled salmon to beef stir fry. I also shared it on my Instagram today, actually. So obviously not the day that you're listening to this, but the day I recorded this. I shared a reel about Gamay and I recommended pairing it with burgers. I think it works well with like beef, chicken, or turkey burgers or even veggie burgers. It's so good at pairing with food. Now, why do I consider Gamay to be the OG chillable red? Well, it's a certain style of Beaujolais. So again, Beaujolais is the French wine made from the grape Gamay. So I'm going to talk about Beaujolais specifically right now. There is a style of Beaujolais called Beaujolais Nouveau. And this is one of the only wines in the world that you can drink just 60 days after the grapes were harvested. Typically, you have to wait, at least 3 months probably. They need to harvest, they need to ferment, they need to go either in barrel or tank to age for just a little bit, and then go in bottle and settle for a little bit. Now, this Beaujolais Nouveau is different. This is one that's meant to be drank like uber young. So this drink actually started as a drink for the workers after harvest, and it was after harvest was complete and they were celebrating. But nothing's going to stick around just at the harvest for the workers for forever. So it started showing up in bistros, in local cafes in Lyon, France, which Lyon is the main city in Beaujolais. Then in the early 1960s, it became a race to see which producer could get their Beaujolais Nouveau to Paris first. And this happened for a few years. And then it spread to the US in the 1980s, and it has become a very popular thing. Now there are over 35 million bottles produced in this Beaujolais Nouveau style. And that is nearly a third of Beaujolais production. So I think it's super cool. Some might say it's a bit of a marketing tactic, but hey, you know what? If it gets people to try a new wine and try something a little different, like, why not? Give it a try. So what does this wine taste like, this Beaujolais Nouveau? It is very, very low in tannins and high acidity. It's kind of like an extreme version of a regular Beaujolais. It's going to be super, super fruity, but more tart than a regular Gamay. So you've got raspberry, grape. This one is actually a wine that tastes like grape. You've got cranberry, candied fruits, and even this is where you get this really unique note of bubble gum. Trust me, you got to try it. I know you don't want to believe me, but it can smell like bubble gum. And this is just meant to be drunk super young and chilled. This is one that you stick in the fridge for at least an hour or two, and that is how you're meant to drink it. So that is a Beaujolais, and that is made with, again, the grape Gamay. And that's our first chillable red wine. Now, jumping straight from the most popular to a grape that you've likely never heard of, let's talk about Refosco. Refosco hails from the Friuli region in northeast Italy. It is deep in color but light in body, which is why it falls under our chillable red wine category. This grape is really starting to gain traction outside of Italy, and one such place is in California with winemaker Steve Mathiasen of Mathiasen Wines. Now, Mathiasen Wines is located in Napa Valley, but it is very, very different from your typical Napa winery. I actually got a chance to visit Mathiasen and do a tasting at their tasting room. And I don't know if it's the same one they have now, but it was one that we actually sat outside. They only had space outside. They had some picnic tables set up. And when you went, you actually got to talk to one of the people who helps out in, I think, both making the wine, and they're hired specifically to talk about the wine. So they're very well versed in it. They're not there just to like sell the wine. They're there to teach you about it. And here, Steve and Jill, his wife Jill, they are the winemakers and the owners of Mathiasen. They were farmers before they were winemakers, and they care a lot about sustainable agriculture, which has led them to become leaders in sustainable winemaking. It's actually really funny. We recently had a Q&A with an expert in sustainability in the court crew, and I was reminding those members of the court crew that one of the very first winemakers that we actually talked to in the court crew as a Q&A was Steve Mathiasen. And he talked a lot about how important sustainability was to him, both with taking care of the land and with taking care of his workers. So it's not really related to the chillable red wine, but I think it's always a good thing to call out when you have wineries that are doing these really good things and that you should go support them. So coming back to Refosco, Steve first discovered the region of Friuli on a trip in 2005, and he fell in love with the wines made from the indigenous grapes. So when he returned, he brought with him, or not brought with him, no, he didn't do that. You can't do that. That's not legal. He began planting, I'm sure he got them perfectly legally. He began planting Refosco along with two other indigenous varietals from Friuli, which is Ribolla Gialla and Scioppettino. Now, while most Refosco in the US is actually, so you're going to find Refosco outside of Napa Valley and Mathiasen wines, but a lot of it, if it's older, is actually this grape called Mondouse Noir. True Refosco was imported from Italy and officially released in the late 90s. And Mathiasen is currently one of the only plantings in California of this true Refosco. But like I said, it is growing, and it is growing in attention, I think, because of this chillable red wine movement, because it falls under that category. Aroma-wise, you're going to get things like black cherries, dried herbs, espresso, and black licorice. Now, this red wine is not your typical fruit-forward porch pounder, but trust me, it tastes just as delicious with a good chill as the other wines on this list do. These wines, they can range in flavor and structure, but they almost always have that strikingly high acidity, medium tannins, and low alcohol. Now, when it comes to food pairings, this is going to be a great one to have alongside a charcuterie board. It pairs wonderfully with cured meats. Okay, next on our list is a grape called Blaufränkisch. This podcast is sponsored by Repour Wine Savers. Listen, I love wine, but that doesn't mean I want to drink a full bottle every night. You see, it's always a risk opening a bottle knowing I'll only have a glass or two. But now I don't worry about that at all because I have Repour. These little contraptions will keep your open bottles of wine good for up to 3 months by removing oxygen from the bottle using fancy chemistry. And they're so easy to use. I simply open a bottle of wine, cork or screw cap, just like normal, and enjoy my glass or two. Then, when I'm ready to call it a night, I rip the foil off my Repour wine saver and place it in the bottle in place of the cork or screw cap, and then stick the bottle in the fridge. Simple as that. Then, whenever I grab another glass from that bottle in the future, I just make sure to put the Repour back on as soon as I'm done pouring. It's that easy. Want to give Repour a try? Head to repour.com, REPOUR.com, and use code CORKANDFIZZ for 10% off your order. That's Repour, REPOUR.com, and use code CORKANDFIZZ. No spaces in that, and the and is spelled out, so it's CORKANDFIZZ. Once you have Repour, you'll never have to worry about opening a bottle of wine just for one glass. I mean, heck, now you can try 2 or more wines at the same time and have your own at-home wine tasting. This podcast is sponsored by the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club. Interested in trying new wines, but not sure where to start? Or maybe you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you love the idea of tasting wine live with me. If that's you, come join my Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club, and you'll get to sip wine with me twice a month while I help you find new favorite wines. The Cork Crew is not your ordinary wine club. This is a community of people who are passionate about exploring new flavors, learning about different wine styles, and having fun along the way. And the best part about this club, purchasing the wine is completely optional. Plus, all events are recorded, and you have access to the full library of recordings as a Cork Crew member, so you can always catch up if you can't make it live. Oh, and did I mention it's virtual, which means you get to do all of this from the comfort of your sofa in your PJs. No need to worry about driving in crappy traffic, finding a designated driver, or spending an arm and a leg on a taxi. Want to give it a try without the commitment? You're in luck. Right now, I'm offering a free class pass to anybody who wants to try out the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Tasting Club. With this pass, you'll be able to join a Cork Crew event of your choosing. No strings attached. I don't need your credit card. I don't need you to sign up for anything. You'll be my guest. Simply head to corkandfizz.com/free class pass to get your class pass and be one step closer to becoming a member of the best wine tasting club around, the Cork Crew. I can't wait to see you there. Now let's get back to the show. Now, when I think of chillable reds, I immediately think of Austrian red wines, and Blaufränkisch is one of those. Now, the other is Zweigelt, if you're curious, or I don't know if I'm saying that right. I think Zweigelt sounds the best. But Blaufränkisch is one that I've seen a little bit more, so we're going to talk about that one first. So, while its origins are still a little bit muddy, some say that Blaufränkisch comes from Germany, where it may also be called Lemberger. Others say Slovenia or Austria, but it's clear that the grape has made a home for itself in Austria. Blaufränkisch is actually a parent of one of the other grapes on this list, Gamay. And while it shares its offspring's boisterously high acidity, it differs in flavor. In terms of aroma, you can be prepared to get a lot of black pepper, along with blackberries, black cherries, allspice, and a little bit of a green earthy note. The wine will be light to medium in body with medium tannins and medium alcohol. One of my favorite producers is Judith Beck, and you're going to recognize the wine. It's going to have a bright blue label on it. All of her wines are considered a natural wine, and so this is another one that is great to look for. It's the Judith Beck. It'll be labeled as Blaufränkisch. Now, she also makes a great red blend. Remember that other grape I mentioned, Zweigelt? It's a red blend of Zweigelt and St. Laurent. It's called Beck Inc., and I highly recommend that one as well. So if you can find either the Judith Beck Blaufränkisch or her Beck Inc., give them a try. When pairing Blaufränkisch with food, look to the area of origin for inspiration. So think smoked sausage, goulash, or even spatzel noodle dish. All right, moving on. We are on to wine number 4 now. So we talked about Gamay, Refosco, Blaufränkisch. Now, how about a wine that you've likely heard of before? Cabernet Franc. Now, you may have heard of this before, but did you know that Cabernet Franc is the parent of Cabernet Sauvignon? I mean, you probably did if you listened to my grape deep dive on Cabernet Franc. If you haven't, go back and check that out. I will add it to the show notes for you to listen to it. Now, if that is news to you, that it is the parent of Cabernet Sauvignon, can you guess who the other parent is? And I'll give you a hint. It's in the name. Think on that, and you let me know if you come up with that. Now, Cabernet Franc is originally from France, where it's still particularly popular in Bordeaux and Loire Valley, but now it grows in countries all across the world. So you have Italy, United States. So in the US, you could find it in New York, Virginia, Oregon, Washington, California. You'll also find it in Hungary, Chile, and South Africa, just to name a few. Cabernet Franc is often distinguishable by its earthy bell pepper notes, which comes from a compound known as pyrazines, which are found naturally in the wine. Now, if you're not a fan of this bell pepper note, don't worry, you do not have to give up on Cabernet Franc altogether. I recommend finding a Cabernet Franc from the New World, and especially a warmer region. And again, New World basically means anywhere but Europe. You could also look for one that has been in New Oak. All of these things will lead to a Cabernet Franc which has more fruitier notes and less of those green bell pepper notes. Along with the bell pepper, you might also notice aromas of strawberry, raspberry, and even a nice minerality note. You know us wine people love minerality. Think like crushed gravel or wet pavement. Structure-wise, this red wine has the telltale high acidity and light to medium body that we would expect from a chillable red, with medium tannins and alcohol. Now, this is one that I've had so many amazing wines of, so I'm going to share some of my favorite producers, but this is by no means an exhaustive list. There are so many more out there. And like I said, go check out that full episode all about Cabernet Franc. It is an old deep dive. I don't have the number handy, but we'll put it in the show notes. Favorite producers include Early Mountain from Virginia, also Walsh Family Wines from Virginia. We actually interviewed the winemakers there. You can find that at episode 31. I had that one jotted down for you. It's a great episode. It's actually the most listened to episode on this podcast. So, it's probably pretty good. From the Loire Valley, I recommend Arnaud Lambert. Then from Oregon, we have Leah Jorgensen. And just last week, you heard from the winemaker at Essia, and I tried her Cabernet Franc, which happens to still be on my desk here. I just did that interview. You listened to it last week. I recorded it an hour ago. So her Cabernet Franc is really good. And then also Weiss Vineyards, that is Weiss Vineyards in New York, is another good one. Again, Cabernet Franc is another food-friendly wine. Can you noticing a theme here? Chillable reds are not just great for the summer, they're also great for pairing with foods. Cabernet Franc pairs just as well with tomato-based dishes as it does with anything with like a vinegar-based sauce. It also works well with vegetable dishes, especially those that have a little bit of that higher bell pepper note to them. Okay, moving on. Our next chillable red, it's honestly one that you've probably had before, but you might not have known it. The grape is called Cinsault. It is Cinsault. This grape is a minor blending grape in both the Southern Rhone Valley reds and Provence rosés. So minor blending grape, meaning it usually shows up as a smaller percentage in the blend. Cinsault is another variety that's got its start in France, but has now traveled across the world to places like Algeria, Morocco, South Africa, and Tunisia. It's also obviously made it over to the US. I feel like we grow just about everything here at this point, and it's very popular in Lebanon. On its own, Cinsault produces wines with aromas of bright red fruit. Think raspberry, tart cherry, cranberry. You also get some floral notes like rose, and these herbaceous spice notes that will make you think of your favorite black tea. This wine has the true chillable red structure. It's got light body, high acidity, and barely there tannins. In terms of producers, this might be a little bit harder to find on its own, but a couple that I found include Marjoram in Santa Barbara, Domaine de Torres, this is in Lebanon, and A los Viñateros Bravos, which is in Chile. And again, I'll throw those in the show notes. I know just hearing them might make it hard to spell them, and I might not be saying them perfectly correct. We'll put them in the show notes for you. Now, again, due to the low tannins and high acidity, this wine can pair well with, say it with me now, just about anything. But I highly recommend this one, giving it a try with a lightly spiced curry. Okay, I think we're on to our last chillable red wine. Now, If you want more, I have 2 more chillable red wines that I mentioned on a blog post on my website. You can head to corkandfizz.com/wine-blog. Yeah, I'm really creative with that blog title. I came up with it when I first made the website and then just never changed it. So it is corkandfizz.com/wine-blog. I'll put the full link in the comments, but if you go to the wine blog and you go to that little search bar on the right and just type in chillable red wines, it'll pop right up. Or you can go to the show notes and we will give you the full link. And like I said, that has 2 additional chillable red wines, and it has all of this written down for you if you'd rather read about it after you listen to this. Now, our last one is a super fun one. This list would not be complete without our lovable, bubbly red Lambrusco. It is grown almost entirely in the Emilia-Romagna region in Italy, and it is a wine that is made in a variety of sweetness levels. If you prefer something drier, aka no sugar or low amounts of sugar, look for the word secco, S-E-C-C-O. Now, if you want a hint of sweetness, look for a Lambrusco labeled semi-secco or amabile. In terms of flavor, you can expect aromas of fresh strawberries, rhubarb, pink flowers, and a hint of something earthy like potting soil. Depending on your sweetness level, your Lambrusco should be light to medium bodied. It's going to be a little bit more medium bodied with more sugar. That more sugar just kind of adds to the richness of it. So if you're looking for something dry, it'll be more light bodied. Has high acidity and again, low tannins and generally low alcohol. Now, I'll be honest, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Lambrusco. I think it's because sometimes it can taste a bit like cola to me, and I've just never enjoyed the taste of soda. I don't know exactly what that taste is, but sometimes the Lambrusco will go that way, and I'm not the biggest fan of it. But when I find a good one and I'm in the mood for something fun, Lambrusco is the first one I think of. So one of the producers that I like a lot and that I see in many stores is Linny 910. If you've ever seen on my Instagram, I've shared their bottle many times. It's kind of that one Lambrusco that made me realize, oh, I don't hate Lambrusco. I just don't like some Lambrusco. This is another one that is great to pair with your charcuterie and cheese board. I think it's just such a fun pairing. All right, those were your 6 chillable red wines. We talked about Gamay, Refosco, La Franquish, Cabernet Franc, Cinsault, and Lambrusco. Like I said, if you want to hear 2 more, or not hear 2 more, but read about 2 more, you can head to my blog on my website, corkandfizz.com. And please let me know. Send me a message on Instagram, email me, Haley@corkandfizz. Which one of these wines do you want to try? I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. If you loved it as much as I did, I'd love it if you could take a quick second to rate it and leave a review. It takes you all of 30 seconds, and it means so much to me. It helps my podcast grow. And you can also share it with friends. You can share it directly with friends by sending them a link, just talking to them about it, or maybe posting it on social media. I would really appreciate it. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We release new episodes every Wednesday. Now, in next week's episode, I'll be sharing another installment of my grape deep dive series. This time, we'll be talking about a very misunderstood grape, and that is Merlot. Now, before you're like, oh, I'm not a fan of Merlot, we can skip that. You gotta hear this. You gotta hear this podcast. We're gonna talk about the sideways effect and how a movie completely destroyed the reputation of this grape. And then I'm gonna talk about why this grape is so important in Walla Walla and how surprised I was about what winemakers said about the grape they think is the best in Walla Walla. Thanks again for listening, and if you want to learn more about wine, come follow me at Cork and Fizz on Instagram. And to try more wine outside of your comfort zone, like some of these chillable red wines, be sure to sign up for my virtual tasting club, The Cork Crew. Remember, you can join your first event totally free, no credit cards needed, I promise, no strings attached other than I might send you an email or two. Just head to corkandfizz.com/free class pass. You will get signed up for your free class pass, and then you can sign up for any of my upcoming Cork Crew tastings. I would love for you to join us. Cheers!